If you have always wanted to write a book, but it just never seems like the right time, or if you know you'll write a book someday, you just don't know when someday is, or if you have big plans for publishing your book, getting a book deal, retiring yourself from your current job so that you can invest fully in your thought leadership, just not yet, then this is the video for you. Today, I want to talk about how you can tell when it's the right time to write your book. And just as importantly, I'm going to drop a truth bomb on you. I want you to ask yourself, is now the right time or is it not? We're going to make this decision in today's video. Stay tuned. If you set a New Year's resolution to write your book in 2024, I have an amazing offer for you. Page and Podium will be raising our prices by 20% starting April 1st, 2024. But in the meantime, every new client who signs their contract and pays their deposit will be grandfathered in at the 2023 rates. That is a 20% discount from our rates moving forward. You do not want to miss this. Head over to pageandpodium.com/contact to fill out your application now. So let's talk about how to know when it's the right time to start your book. And I want to be a little bit vulnerable and share a little bit with you about my own journey to my first published book that was under my name. Because even though I had written other books, I had not published a book in my name before. And I found this to be a really difficult hurdle that I was not completely honest with myself about. So my first journey to a published book started around the time that Black Lives Matter first appeared. Now, this is well before 2020. This is around Trayvon Martin's murder. This is a time period where not a lot of people were talking about Black Lives Matter, but it was starting to get some prominence. Now, I had been doing work as a graduate student, then as an academic, in social movement history. So I had my ear to the ground on this kind of thing. And one thing that happened was I had just met my now dear friend, Andre E. Johnson, and he is not only a movement leader, he is also a social movement historian and just an amazing person. So around that time, he and I had both started working together at the University of Memphis. And just in a casual conversation, I said, we should do a research project on Black Lives Matter. We should figure out what it means to people. We should talk to people that, disagree with Black Lives Matter and kind of see what they say. And we should just generally get some documentation of how this movement is going at this point in history. Well, if you have met Dr. Johnson, you will know that he was all in on this. Not only is the topic right up his alley, he also, I think, recognized an opportunity for us to collaborate in a way that was going to boost both of our work and also both of our confidence. So he was in. From then on, we very quickly started going through the process of the research process that you have to do for this type of a study. We were getting approval from the university. We recruited people to talk to. We ran the interviews. It was an amazing experience. People shared so much and so deeply with us about their experience. And we ended up with something like 500 pages of single-spaced transcripts of things that people had shared with us. Now, we were at a crossroads here because we had, and I remember he had printed it. It was this big stack of papers on his desk. I had just the files. I'm an electronic person. But we had this data that was right in front of us. And I said, all right, what should be our first journal article? Now, I need to give a little bit of a caveat here, a little bit of an explanation here. When we say journal article, this is essentially something similar to a magazine article. They're quite long. They're usually around 30 to 35 pages. And you, as an academic, you submit these journal articles. You try to get them published within a collection of other people's work that an editor will put all together. So if you've seen a book that was, edited stories together, it's similar to that, just the academic version. Here's the thing. It's not that easy to publish a journal article. It takes a lot of training, and a lot of people really struggle with it their whole entire career. I had worked really, really hard years before to figure out how to publish a journal article, so I felt so comfortable with this. So, of course, I had gone to him saying, what's going to be our first journal article? Well, he did not even pause. He said, I think it's a book. When I tell you that simple statement set my heart racing, I think I probably flushed. That was so unnerving to me, the way that he said that. I think it's a book. And what I said to him was, I don't think I can write a book. I did not feel confident that anyone cared what I thought. The word book, the phrase write a book, just felt so scary. Even though I had written other people's books, I did not have any idea how I would step into this world and publish something with my name on it that would be in front of people. Because the thing about journal articles is not many people read them. The thing about books, those go pretty wide. So I told him no. I didn't even stammer very long. I had to get back to my office, but I said, nope, I think it's an article. Let's work on the article. Every time I saw him after that, he said, oh, you thinking about that book? And every single time I said, like, Andre, I would do my little deflection techniques. And we kept working on an article. In fact, we wrote this whole article. Here is what saved me from making the biggest mistake that I could have made. We wrote that journal article and we submitted it, and we got what's called a desk reject. What that means is that the editor of the journal didn't even review it. She just said, this topic is not right for us. Sent it back to us. We were rejected. That's a really normal part of writing a journal article, but it hadn't been normal for me. So it did rattle me a little bit. And when I went to Andre and said, this article is not going through, it got rejected, he said, it's a book. That moment changed my life. I went back to my office. I thought, I don't know, we could try the journal article somewhere else. And then I took a deep breath and I said, I think it is a book. I went back to his office and I said, all right, let's do this. I need your help. I don't know how to publish a book, but I think we can do this. And of course, he was so excited. My friend Andre, he had published many books before. He had relationships with a lot of different book publishers. So that part, I knew he would have my back. But I think the thing that was really holding me back, of course, it was fear. Of course, it was a lack of self-confidence. And I just want to hug that old version of me and say, you had things to say. Embrace it. Move forward proudly. But that isn't where I was. And where I was, where I wonder if you are too, was in my comfort zone. See, here's the thing. When we get really, really comfortable with whatever type of idea sharing we're used to doing, it can be so hard to think about switching that entire paradigm to something that most of us have never experienced and taking the leap to say, I matter enough to write and publish a book. I needed somebody to say that to me, and it was Andre. And if you need somebody to say that to you, let it be me. You deserve to write a book, and I promise you can do it. But if you're not so sure it's the comfort zone issue, if you think the timing might be off, I want to talk through a few things that might have popped up to give you kind of evidence that the timing really isn't right. Not because I want to talk you out of it, because I want you to be able to make a thoughtful, reflective decision about when that time will be. The thing I don't want is for you to write your book someday, but then that someday never comes. Okay, so let's talk about the ways that I have seen this not the right time conversation come up so that we can think about whether your reasons are really reflected in this kind of list of comfort zone issues or whether they're real issues and you want to set a date in the future, a concrete time when it is going to be time to start. Okay, so the first thing that I hear, the first objection that I hear when I ask whether it's time to write a book is people will say, I will write a book once I have built up my speaking career. Now, I get this because a speaking career is really hard too, right? And I think for a lot of folks, the idea of starting a new presentation form of a speaking career at the same time that they're starting a new presentation form of a book, that can feel really, really overwhelming. So it's natural to say, I'm just going to do, one or the other. I'll start with the speaking career, then I'll do the book. If, however, you have been on the speaking circuit for very long, you will know Having a book is going to make that speaking career go so much faster. There is something about that published author line under your name that really makes organizations excited to have you. It makes speakers bureaus excited to have you. It's going to get you more podcast interviews if that's the type of speaking you want to do. By having that book, even if it's not done, even if it is just in process and you have a title and you have a kind of a presumed publication date or a hopeful publication date, that can be enough to give you that boost. So if you have been saying, I don't think it's the right time, I want to work on this speaking career first, challenge that. Think about whether it might actually be helpful to embark on both of those goals at the same time. If so, then now very well might be the right time to start your book. The second thing I hear, and I hear this most often in masterminds or, business networking events and that kind of thing. People will say to me, well, I know I want to write a book, but I need to get my business settled first. So I have thoughts on this. As an entrepreneur, as a small business owner myself, I totally relate to this feeling of, but I have so many things I need to still do before I can really feel confident in my business, before I can feel like people are going to care what I have to say. I get it. But let me give you two things to think about to determine whether this really is a good reason to delay or whether it might be just keeping you out of that book spotlight and in your comfort zone. The first, and I think you know this is true, there is no such thing as a settled business. Now, that is not to say that there are not businesses that run more smoothly and with more clear planning than others. Of course, that is true. But if you are waiting until your business feels like literal clockwork, you might be waiting a really, really long time. And here's the other reason that you need to think about, the other thing you need to ask yourself. When I work with business owners to write their book, every single time they come away with a much, much clearer sense of their message, of their values, of their purpose, and what they really want to do in the world. Now, if I had to come up with a way to get your business settled to make it feel comfortable and home and supportive, that's what I would say, right? If we can get those values and the message and all of the purpose stuff, all of that settled, doesn't that make it so much easier to prioritize in your business? Doesn't it make it so much easier to hire new team members? Doesn't it make it so much easier to bring in new clients? I want you to ask yourself, am I waiting for my business to be settled because it's allowing me to stay in my comfort zone? Or am I putting my book off even though a book is the thing that will help me feel settled in my business? Because I think there's a pretty big possibility that going ahead with the book might help give you clarity in all of these other areas. Food for thought. The third thing I hear a lot, and this comes up in all kinds of visibility issues, is I will write my book once I have a bigger email list. Now, this is not misguided. There are really good reasons that an email list could help you market and promote your book. But what I want to have you think on a little bit is whether promoting a book, whether having a book to promote that, again, has a very clear message, helps you hone in on what you're trying to do in the world, whether that type of book actually could be the thing that helps you grow your email list. And here's what I mean. When you write a book, whether you publish traditionally, whether you self-publish, whether you go with a hybrid, you are going to be doing promotional work. All nonfiction authors are at the helm of promoting their book. And what I mean by that is that they are the ones on interviews, not the publishers. They are the ones speaking at events, not the publishers. They are the ones that are the most passionate about that story. Now, if a book is going to push you into that world, push you, say, to do a podcast tour, push you, say, to land a couple of speaking events, push you to be a little bit more open and comfortable sharing about your ideas and your message, is that not the exact strategy you would use to grow your email list? Except this time you have a book. You're going to have an easier time landing those podcast interviews. You're going to have an easier time getting those keynote address opportunities. You are going to have an easier time sharing with the people who need to find you what it is you want to help them with. So if you are waiting until you have a bigger email list to write that book, here's what I would suggest. Write that book. Use it to grow your email list. and then you can write the next book. And trust me, after you write that first one, you will be hooked. The first one is the hardest part. Once you know the process, you can do it. All right. The fourth thing that I hear from people who say that they're not ready, and this one is pretty misguided, I'm sorry to say. The fourth thing that I hear people say is that when a publisher or an agent reaches out to them, then they will write their book. I don't hear this quite as commonly as the ones above. It's why it's number 4. But I have heard people say that. I have heard people say, then I will know that someone wants this book, and then I will write it. So there are some problems with this, namely that just is really not the way things happen. It can occasionally happen with, if you get a viral story about, climbing a huge mountain or like rescuing someone from imminent death or something like that. That can happen. Most of the time, though, publishers are not reaching out to individuals. They are waiting to get the proposal from that individual. So the fact that a publisher has not reached out to you does not mean that your book won't sell. It just simply isn't the way the industry works. But that's not the thing I want you to think about. The thing I want you to think about is whether that is a form of hedging your bets. Whether what you're trying to do is write and publish your book in a context where you perceive that you can't fail. If that is what you're doing, if you are trying to make sure that that book goes smoothly and you never have to take a risk with any aspect of it, you are dodging the real beauty of writing a book. Because here's the thing, writing a book is always a risk. Sharing your message is always a risk. Being on camera, being in front of people, it is always a risk. But don't risks pay off so often? Especially if you're a business owner, you've taken many, many risks. And aren't you grateful for most, if not all of them? I know I am in my own business. I'm really grateful that I stepped up and took risks. I'm really grateful that I stepped up and took a risk to publish that first book under my name. So think about whether this idea that you would want to have everything be surefire success before you write that book, is that a form for you of playing small? Is that a way that you can avoid taking risks, that you can keep yourself isolated and insular and avoid ever being exposed on a public stage, being really visible? Because if that's what's happening, there is a bigger issue than your book, right? And now is maybe not the time to write the book, but now is definitely the time to find a life coach, to start working with someone on that mindset, because that mindset will hold you back in every single thing you want to do. Once you've got your mindset clear, I bet you're going to be more than ready to get that book written. The last one, this is a whopper of a reason. People will say sometimes, when I'm ready, I will know. When I'm ready, I will know. Let me tell you, I didn't. I needed that outside person to look at me and say, I know you don't feel like you are good enough to write this book. I know you don't feel like anyone cares what you have to say, but people do. And you have something that needs to be out in the world. You are sitting on something that could help so many people. And your refusal to get over the mindset blocks that are stopping you is the thing that is stopping you from making the impact that you want to make on the world. I needed someone to say that to me. Not in so many words, but I got the gist. Most of us do not know when it's time. Most of us need a nudge, and we need a commitment. We need to be pushed a little bit to entertain the possibility that now's the right time, and we need to make a commitment, whether that be with a publisher that we promise to send a proposal to, whether that be with a book coach that we hire, put a deposit in and get on the calendar, whether that be with a ghostwriter, whether that even just be someone that you work with or that you know personally that can be an accountability buddy. You are going to need some kind of outside commitment to be able to move forward to achieve this dream that you want to achieve and that you deserve to achieve. I've been in this industry for a long time. I've worked with a lot of people. And I think most of y'all would be pretty shocked to know how many manuscripts get to me after they have sat on a hard drive or in a drawer for literally a decade. 2 in 2023 alone. Multiple people that I hear from have wanted to write a book someday. and someday ended up getting pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed. Everything else in their life came first because they had not dealt with that mental struggle, that mindset that they needed to overcome to really believe that they could step into their power and step into this role that they know they can take as a leader in their industry, as a leader in their family, as someone with so much amazing wisdom to share. I don't want that to be you. We had in 2023, we wrote a book for a man. His adult son had hired us to put this book together. And we went through all of his stories. We talked with he had 4 adult children. We talked to all of his children. We gathered these stories together. We wrote it up. And just before we were ready to publish, after the manuscript was done, but before it had been published, that man passed away. His children were so grateful to have that book. But I think sometimes, what if he had said, I don't know, I don't think it's the right time. Think of all that would have been lost for that family. Stuff that nobody knew about, stuff he'd never shared. I don't want that to be you. I believe that you deserve to write a book. I believe that everyone has a story to share. If you would like some support, if you would like that little nudge, I am more than happy to give that to you. Please like and subscribe. And when you are ready, head over to pageandpodium.com/contact and fill out our application form. We'll let you know if you're a perfect fit for our company. And if you're not, we'll let you know that too. There is literally no risk. There is literally no reason to wait. You can do it. Now's your time. Hey, have you been waiting for a sign that it's time to start your book? Because I've got one. Page and Podium has always been dedicated to bringing you the very best in editing support, writing support, design, production, and promotion of your book. And if you act right now, you can lock in our 2023 rates. From now until the end of March 2024, every new client who signs their contract and pays their deposit will be able to take advantage of a 20% discount off our 2024 rates, effectively locking in last year's rates. Plus, a 2024 start date almost guarantees that your book will be done or very near it by the end of this year. Sounds amazing, right? Just head over to pageandpodium.com/contact to fill out your application form. We'll book you in for a consult, get you all set up with your contract, and you will be ready to go to get that book out and change the world in 2024.